Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Ridge Community Church podcast. My name is John. I'm one of the pastors at the Ridge, and our vision is to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. So we want to bring you something hopeful and helpful for your everyday life, whether you've been following Jesus for a while or you're still trying to figure out exactly what you do believe about God. Now, you'll find on this podcast things that'll help with conversations about marriage and parenting and mental health and work, practical things to help you in your faith journey, and a lot more. So whether you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app or you're watching on YouTube, be sure to follow and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the hopeful and helpful conversations. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of the Ridge Podcast. I'm excited to share a conversation that I got to have with our lead pastor, Mark Weigt, about Bold and really getting at the heart of the vision behind it and the vision behind the projects that we are doing because of Bold. I think this is a great chance to see a little bit into the future of what can happen when we really lean into God and really do what He's called us to do. So this is my conversation with Mark. Well, hey, Mark, thanks for coming back again for another bold episode, right?
Love it. Part two.
Part two. All right. Hey, so in the first part, which if people listening to haven't had a chance to listen to yet, really dived into some of those, the kind of a Q&A of, hey, here are a lot of questions people are asking. And I would love if we could spend this time, Mark, just I think hearing some of really the heart behind Bold and maybe even in the specific things that we hope Bold will accomplish greater than maybe the overarching goal of the reducing the lostness by 0.5%. Maybe we can start there. What do you hope really happens in our community because of Bold?
Well, our vision verse is Acts 2:47, that the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So what do I hope happens? I hope that happens. Mm-hmm. And neighborhoods, workplaces, wherever that may be, gyms, that, man, we're hearing story after story because people feel empowered, they feel discipled, they have God's heart, that we are hearing story after story of just someone going like, I'm in with Jesus, man. I was lost and now I'm found. I was that lost sheep. We were showing that picture, and the shepherd, he caught me, brought me home, and we celebrated. They celebrated in heaven. They celebrated here with us, man. That's what I'm hoping happens.
Yeah. What do you think of an impact that will have on our community, our church, maybe specifically there, if we're able to do that?
Well,
we're able to do that. There we go.
Yeah. On our church community, it'd be huge. I always relate it to this: when new life is a part of a family. Okay. So, another child is added or grandchild or whatever it may be. No one goes, oh man, this sucks. They all go, oh man, isn't this awesome? And when that baby comes, everyone's like, oh man, or the adoption, everybody's excited about it. And why? Because new life just breathes life into everyone around it. And that's what happens to a local church that sees new life put into it. And someone bring new life in Christ. It's the same thing, man. Everybody gets excited because they go, oh man, God's at work, and it builds their faith. And if He can, and then my one can. And so all that stuff begins to happen. It's a huge ripple effect, man. It is life-giving.
So maybe we could dive into some of the specific projects that we really hope that Bold is going to accomplish, and maybe just dive into some of them. I'd love to hear some of the vision behind that. You could even, if you want to share, hey, why did we pick this thing? Why was it so important to us? Let's start there. Maybe we could, can you talk about why we feel called to develop a mental health care center?
Yeah, I think so. As a church, when we said, man, God, we want to see you move in a way where we see 5,000 find you by the end of 2030. Okay. We had to ask some larger questions, and some of the larger questions were, how does that happen, God? I mean, this is the planning side. I mean, if the Holy Spirit doesn't move, it doesn't matter, okay? But we had to do our part to go, God, we're going to bring this to you. So we said, how do you do that? Well, there's a couple ways. One is we have to continue to pour spiritually into the people who attend the Ridge, so they are growing in a way where we like to say they are on mission, disciple to mission. So they have God's heart for those who around them who are disconnected. Okay. So as we go through Bold, we're going to see more of that happen, and we're going to be able to elevate that in people's lives. Okay. So that's important. So people are mobilized to do that. The second thing I think is every local church needs to ask, based on the community that God, you've placed us in, what are some of the larger needs in our community, and what are the ones that you are calling us to? Maybe it's one, maybe it's a half one, whatever it may be. So we asked that question, and we had a lot of conversation about it, and we had a lot of options, and we just said, and this mental health one has always been near and dear to our heart. And we know in asking that question, it allows us on a bigger level to go and meet people that maybe we don't have relationships with, but that we can just go to where they are, and we can just go, hey, we're here to serve you. We see you. You are heard. The church is a place you can wrestle with those things, that you can come to. And we're here to support you and walk you through that. In fact, and you don't have to flip a dime at all for it. We're here to do that with you. So we looked at those two things, John.
Yeah. Can you maybe share some about the partnership that we hope to accomplish with the Mental Health Care Center? Yeah,
because we're a church, and we're not a Christian counseling organization, nor do we want to be. Okay, that's not our wheelhouse. But we know this is just God has called people into this field and all that stuff. So we felt like we want to, just like we do for Live Big, we join organizations that we feel that we've screened that are getting it done at a high level and all that stuff. Well, New Life is one of those for us. We've been partnering with them for years. And so we approached them with this, and they were like, we love it. We've been trying to decentralize counselors to more of a local level in a lot of ways. And so it's near and dear to them. And then we talked about our desire to leverage our partnerships through Live Big and get them at that level. And so it was just a real easy conversation to go, hey, how can we do this? Hey, let's work this thing out. And so we've been having that for a couple months, and it's just been a really cool thing. They protect us in this from legality that is specialized or special to what counseling organizations have. And we don't have that, but they're going to cover that because of their coverage over this whole thing. We provide some mission-driven stuff that they can't have. And so it's going to be a really neat thing, John. I think it's really going to be a cool thing.
Yeah, I love the whole process in it because it's two parts, right? It's this heart. Well, we want to meet the need. We want to help people. We want to be for people. We want to help them. Combined with, hey, how do we do that in the most effective way? It's not just like, well, we want to help this, and so let's throw darts at a wall and see what works. It's like, no, how do we do this in the most effective way and really equip a organization with what we think would be a partnership that really benefits the community? And so I love that kind of combination.
I think it's going to be neat to watch. I'm really excited to see how, just as we experiment with some, I think it's going to be great.
Okay, so another thing I know is near and dear to your heart. You've always been, as long as I've known you, you love leadership. You love people that use their influence to help others, and you love pouring into the next generation of leaders. And maybe you could share about what a leadership residency program is and why is that important?
Yeah, I'll first start with the kind of the genesis behind it.
Yeah,
the story of that. So we're a part of this network of churches here in this area where like-minded churches that want to start new churches and campuses, see the church multiply. So to do that, you got to raise up leaders, prepare them, and then release them and to support them and all that stuff. So we've been doing this for, 14 years. And over the last 3 or 4 years, there's just been a real slowing of any sort of multiplication with churches. And the reason is that we don't have a bench of leaders ready to go. And so what we do is then we hire headhunters like they do in the corporate world. And they're like, hey, do you know anybody anywhere around the country and all that stuff? And it's like, why are we doing that? We should not. That is an indictment on us. And so what our heart has been is like, why we can't settle for that. That is an our thing. That's an our fault sort of thing. And so we just looked around and we said, why aren't our next generation feeling like this is a part of or an option for them as a calling? And we have people in the corporate world who are like, hey, I want to explore this. Where can I go? And we're like, read this book, which is fine, but it doesn't allow that to happen.
Half measure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've just said, we just need to do something about it. And so this leadership residency idea has really, really come from that. And what's great about it is, as we've looked in this area in Southeast Wisconsin, we haven't seen a really effective seminaries. It's just not a priority in this area right now. So we figure, man, if we can build something that gives people education, the proper education, and then practical ministry experience that's guided, very strategic and all that stuff, we really feel like we can keep our best and brightest in this area. And we can launch more churches and campuses, fill church staffs and nonprofits, all that stuff, start new nonprofits, just a lot that can happen with this thing. I think this is a longer, slower burn. Yeah. But the long-term impact on this thing potentially is absolutely huge.
And it's not just people from the Ridge, right? It's the whole area.
It's the whole, it's a great point, John. Yeah, we already been talking to some of our network churches, and we've said, hey, we've cast this vision. They go, we've got a couple potential residents we want to send there. We're like, great. And so, this isn't just for the Ridge. Actually, our vision behind it was for the church in Southeast Wisconsin and how we can make it better. So, that's a great point, John. I'm glad you brought that out.
So with this particular program, maybe we can vision cast like, hey, 5 years from now, we'll know, we will know we did a great job or we're doing a great job if what's happening.
I would say, because once again, it's going to be a slower startup. All right. Yeah. So how slow, I don't know. All right. But it's not some all of a sudden, hey, we got 40 students here. No, we've got to build in and then correct the systems and then do all that. And we're already working with some high level residents around the country, which has been really cool, residencies around the country, which is really fascinating. So they're going to be a part of this whole thing, helping us. And it's just been great to see God open up the doors. So back to the success thing. I would say, man, it'd be great 5 years from now if we saw 30 students that were exploring high level ministry callings. And you have some of the next generation, and you have some people from the corporate world that are stepping in and going, man, I feel called to do this. I want to explore this. Great. Come on in.
And what's so cool is then they're equipped in a way that then they're leading more, right? It's almost like this multiplication effect where it's not just then they're using those gifts and those abilities to import an exponential level beyond what we could do just without this happening.
Well, and as a network, if we're not planting a couple churches a year at least, man, we're behind population growth. And so, and behind the percentage of churches that are closing. So, man, we need to raise up more leaders. We really do. And I think, so back to the 5 year thing, man, when we're seeing more churches planted, we're seeing higher level leaders that are stepping into staff level positions because they're trained and they're called and all that stuff. I would say that would be some of the key indicators for right there.
And I did a conversation with our campus pastor in Oak Creek, Franklin, Forrest Anderson, talking through why church plants are so important to have. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, why is that? You can find a deep dive on our podcast. I'll link that in the show notes. But maybe you could give us a quick view. Like, why do you view church plants so important?
Well, the difference between a campus and a church is a campus is a part of an existing church.
Yeah. Okay.
So it is going to be like for the Ridge, it's going to be the Ridge and whatever that community is. A church is same mission, but it's not a part of the Ridge. For, maybe it's due to the leader or whatever. So we were a church plant. Okay. I planned this one. And so you need both. Both are a sign of health. And so there's the difference. And so what was your question again? It was,
no, I'm just curious. Like, why do you feel like they're so important?
Yeah. And because what research shows is the highest percentage of lost people actually go to highest percentage. Okay. Not highest number, but highest percentage. Find Jesus at a new church or a new campus than an existing one. And so we've seen that time and time again. So this is the importance of, and we see in the New Testament, the importance of multiplication at a macro level is really critical.
Well, and I love the layers, right? Because we talk about this goal of 5,000 people by the end of 2030 finding Jesus. And it's like, well, how do you get there? It's like, well, we do need new churches and new campuses. And that's awesome. But how do those happen? They don't just happen in a vacuum of like, well, it'd be great. I would love this to happen. It's like, well, wouldn't we all, right? But until you create a system and a process to develop the leaders that can provide for those communities and those campuses, it'll never happen.
Well, I always tell people, I was like, well, do you want a new church planted in Greenfield or in Oak Creek, Franklin, where they're going? Yeah. You see the percentage of people? I mean, I want 100 of them as far as that's concerned, because, not one church and the different styles people connect with. I think that's just really important and really healthy. and we celebrate that. So I think it's all important.
I love that. So maybe you could talk about the need of another campus, and because part of our program is we want to launch another campus from the Ridge, as well as finding a physical location for Oak Creek Franklin. Could you talk about the importance of those, and what was the heart and kind of, you mentioned the genesis behind those?
Yeah, let's start with the third campus first. Is as I just said earlier, it's the healthy and the importance of multiplication. They're going to reach a higher percentage of lost people than an existing one. Now, with the campus thing, and what's important about that is, if I had a map, this would be easier. But I always say, if you look at where our buildings are located, Oak Creek, Franklin, and Greenfield, I always draw a 15-minute drive circle around that, and that's really the guts of the core of who you're going to connect with. Yeah. So the importance of that is, now you think about campus is you put another dot and you get another circle. Yeah. Which allows that to be. And so we have community in our name, man. We want our churches to be where our communities are. And so that the people that are part of that campus, let's just say that's a place where they can invest in their neighbors and friends that don't know Jesus. And they have a place right there in the community that they can invite them to. And that church is a part of the heartbeat of that particular community. Now, the Oak Creek one is, we're going to set aside money for a down payment for a location. We just feel like as we just kind of watch God work there and do some really cool things there, multiply to 2 services and all that good stuff, we just feel like if we can get them a permanent landing place, that's only going to continue to facilitate what they're already doing. The building is not the magic pill. Everybody thinks, well, if I just said it's not the magic pill. The building is just going to facilitate the health of the current campus. Okay. So if the campus wasn't healthy, we go like, we're not going to put them in a building that's going to change things. No, the campus is healthy, man. How can we open another door to continue to see them make a greater impact? And that's why we're doing it. Yeah. I know a lot of Oak Creek Franklin people listening right now are getting really excited. They're awesome, man. They cheer. It's just every event we had, they're so much fun, man. Yeah. Just such a fantastic campus. Yeah. Especially that setup and tear down team. I know that they're. Well, here's the interesting thing now, John. Yeah. Here's the interesting thing about that. And we saw this happen here, is the setup and tear down team. They're the ones that have the hardest transition with a move. Because, man, they're at the front line right now, and and sure, it's wear and tear, all that stuff. And that team is fantastic, man. Yeah. 3 trailers and they're all that stuff. But then all of a sudden it's like, that's not there. And they're like, well, what do I do now? Yeah. And it's a really important step to guide them through integrating. It is very, very hard to do. Wow. I hadn't thought about that before, of like, you're connected with this. We moved into this building. Yeah. Well, especially because when they were right. Yeah. Well, especially because when you serve, right, you really connect. You serve because you're connected to the purpose and the vision, and how you're serving impacts the vision. Community. Yeah. It's all that. And that team is about as close as it gets, because they're up early and they're doing they're crushing it, and they're doing it together. Yeah. There's your plug for joining the OCF setup team right there. Come on, man. Go for it. Yeah. Go for it. Okay. How do you see, and maybe we touched on this a little bit, but how do you see these projects kind of coming together? And maybe we'll pull back a second. Is there any other projects that you would want to highlight that you're like, I'm really excited about this and how this is going to impact our community? I don't know, maybe if it's the expansion or what that looks like. Well, the expansion is important because it allows us then to, like I said, do the residency and the mental health thing. So that's just really important. And we have the space that's unused right now, and it's a very efficient space because it was just a big box. Yeah. So it's a very efficient expansion as far as that's concerned. Now, like I said, I look at this and I go from all layers. I look at this and go, oh man, now we have Live Big set, so now we can plan bigger ahead to do this, and look at maybe exploring some higher level things with Live Big now, because of it's different now. We can look to the future more because we know exactly what's okay. So I really look forward to that. I think it's gonna be great. So now we can do more of Live Big all year. Yeah. Which is going to be cool. I think some of the things that you don't see in this, just because you just can't get into all the nitty gritty of it. Yeah. We've been making database changes and all that stuff. All this is a part of as we move forward as a church into this next season of our vision goal is how can we take some of these resources and then help disciple people at a higher level digitally and all that stuff as we invest in that. So it's really going to have a ripple effect over all those areas that we don't talk enough about because we're talking about all the outward facing stuff, but the inward facing ripple effect of it is going to be very significant.
Mm. Yeah. I love it. I love how everything just kind of feels like it works together, and it feels like a very cohesive plan. And I love that you highlight the inward discipleship, because that's like, how do we equip ourselves to be able to reach people well and effectively? Which you're right. I think easy to overlook.
It's an essential. It's got to happen, man. And we want it to happen.
Well, hey, maybe we can wrap on this, because I know part of the thing that I connect with most is stories from people that are taking steps, or they're excited, or what does that look like? And are there any stories that you're hearing that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have, just through some Ridge Group conversations and just different things like that. I love at a high level. Okay. I say this at a high level, how our church right now is really pushing through. And I'm hearing more honesty about the wrestling, but they know that wrestling needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you many conversations like, man, this has been hard. And what makes it hard? And then, you hear things, but we know that we need to lean into the hard. Bingo. There you go. You find God in the tension. We find God in the heart. Okay, they're pushing back against that stuff. I've heard more and more stories of that over the last week and a half than I can count, and I love it. Yeah, I've heard people say, well, if I do this, then I may have to not retire right away. Yeah, okay. So you means God has something different for you than your plans? I think that's great. Yeah, but we had this. You don't think, man, what if God has something better for you than that? It's funny talking to people that are already retired. Well, we're already set and all that stuff. So does that mean you get an out? I don't get it. So God's entrusted all those resources to you just to not do anything with them. But what if God has more? And so I just love I'm hearing more and more of those conversations and more of those stories that I was talking with a dude who definitely he's probably a new Jesus follower, okay, or if even there yet. And he's been like, yeah, we're going to wrestle through our family about what to give. And he didn't say it in a negative way, but like he wanted to do it. I'm like, dude, that's so cool. That's just so cool, man. I just, those type of stories, it's how God moves and that's how God works. And at the end of the day, he always calls those who know him to sacrifice on behalf of those who don't. It's part of the beauty of being a local church. And this is my third one here. I've done 6 or 7 of these down and I've been a part of. Never regretted one.
Mark, I kind of am struck by 2 different things you shared there. One is I think your excitement about the wrestling, which I think is super fun, right? It's like not just the arrival at the point, because I'm sure you could have been like, well, I got excited when this person said they wanted to do this or that or whatever, which I'm sure is exciting, but it's really like that journey that like, no, it's almost more impactful when somebody is willing to go on the challenging journey and you're seeing them grow their faith because of that process, which I think is really captivating. And
I love to see it. I love to see it. I think it's so good.
Yeah. And the second takeaway for me is I love I think the perspective and the mindset shift of what if God has something better for you? Because I think there's this assumption when we come to this idea of sacrifice that we're sacrificing something that we have or we want, or whether time or whatever. And that cost is going to end up hurting us, and going to be negative for us, instead of, well, God has called you to do something because there's something better in store.
And John, and I would add this to this. Has anyone ever felt like sacrificing? No. They don't. Okay. And so it's like, well, I'm not feeling it. Yeah. Okay. That's the point. Yeah. This is beyond your feelings, and this is surrender. Yeah. And so when we get to this place of surrender, where we're willing to sacrifice, here's what we know. Nothing great that I know of has happened without sacrifice. So it really pushes us to the level of, do we really want to see God? Do we really look at our world and go, yeah, okay, just settle for it? Or do we look at our world and go, man, God is moving and we're seeing this around the country with this next generation and some of these pockets of renewal happening and all that stuff? And there's a sacrifice attached to that. Do we want that here in our community? Well, if we do, we got to put our money where our mouth is. And we're not putting it to just do a bunch of good things. We're doing it because we want to see a move of God. Yeah. And God, he's waiting for us to move before he does. And he's like, are you guys serious about this? Do you really want this? Or do you just, is it a theory that you just go, hey, it'd be great if that happened? No, do you want this? Because I always say this, hey, grace is easy, okay? To accept the grace of God is easy, man. It is. I mean, Jesus did it all. It's a gift. We get to accept it. But man, following Jesus is not. But man, it's great.
Yeah.
It is great. And it's worth doing.
I love that. As we kind of wrap up this conversation, I mean, you just shared some really great stuff. But is there any final thoughts that you'd have for us?
As I think I said in the other one, go on the journey. Go on the journey. Don't be afraid. Don't let fear, don't let anything push you back from that. Really get to this place of surrender here and do. So I always tell people, I'm not telling you what to give. Okay. This isn't about that. This is about a posture of surrendering what God has entrusted to us. That's why I always tell people, they're like, well, I have a hard time surrendering to it. Yeah, because you think it's yours. It's what God has entrusted to us. And he didn't call us to be a consumer. He called us to be a conduit. And so with that, man, this is part of that wrestling. And we go, okay, God, how do you want to facilitate more resources through me that advance your kingdom? And every time I say that, people go, yeah, but what about my needs? God wants to meet your needs so that he finds you trustworthy so he can continue to facilitate resources through us for his kingdom. That's why God blesses generous churches and God blesses generous people because he goes, I can trust you and I want to do. So man, go through the process. Don't be afraid. And whatever he is calling you to do, you do it and you do it with faith and trust that God will provide whatever is necessary and needed to make that happen.
Mark, thank you. Thanks for sharing and I think so wonderfully capturing what Bold really is all about. So thanks.
Oh, it's going to be, hey, I can't wait to see what happens. How it turns out, man. This next season is going to be great.
Well, that was my conversation with Mark, and I want to encourage you, head over to bold@theridgecc.com, and you can find out all the things you need to know about Bold and really get involved and really lean in as we really go into this home stretch here. So thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I'd encourage you to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any hopeful and helpful conversations.